Hello, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
The weather is nice, right?
Yeah. So you just sent the quiz, right?
The quiz is going to be on Thursday in
Or
class.
classwork?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no quiz. There was no quiz for yesterday the way it normally is because we're doing that. Jesus, I can't put these headphones on because we'll do it in class. But after this week, we are back to the remaining 3,
Okay.
10, 11, and 12.
So Thursday is going to be on Genie, right?
Yes, it's going to be on Genie. Yes. It's a very exciting topic. Sad too, of course. And you do. How about everybody else? Karen, how are you? You're mute, Karen. If you want to say something, you should unmute yourself. No, I don't hear you because you were mute. What about now? Say something. Oh, there you go. No, but I see you, which is more important. Okay.
Is this better?
Oh, yay. There you go.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So nice to see you.
Oh, thanks. I usually keep my camera off because nobody else keeps their camera on.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I understand that. When I go to my endless Zooms, I also try to keep my camera off because I'm so tired being on the camera. So it's okay. It's just occasionally, it's nice to, put the face to the name. Now I know what you look like. You don't look like an alien. That's good. All right. So you're doing okay?
Yes, I'm doing okay. Not bad. Can't complain.
Good.
Yeah.
Have you already registered for your spring classes?
I did, yeah. I'm graduating next semester, so.
You're done. So are you doing a lab in the spring?
I am. I'm with Dr. Jennifer Wagner. I've been with her for over a year now.
Oh, that's right. You're working with her as an independent study student. Yeah. I think she mentioned something. Perfect. Yeah. Wow, that's going to be exciting for you to graduate and move on to real life.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You can turn your camera off now. All right. Thank you guys for showing up on this beautiful day. Let's start. No. Okay, good. Where are we? Here we are. Wrong slide, the end. Actually, let me, just to make our life easier, stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna post, I already sent you a message, but it might be a bit too late. So I'm gonna post the file in the chat. This is what we will start with after the logistics. Let me get you the file. Okay. Today we'll be talking about language acquisition, which is one of my favorite topics. So we will talk a little bit about what you may know or not know about language acquisition in general. And that's what this exercise is about. If I can find it. There it is. Okay. Excellent. So download it and have it at your disposal. Now we can go back to the slides. Actually, I should start from the beginning. Okay. Okay, so language acquisition it is. This is week 11. Yeah. Okay, so I'm a little bit behind on grading your blogs. I will catch up this week because I was busy grading your lab 2 a report, which in general are better than lab 1's. Some people have really nicely progressed, which I acknowledged in my messages to you. A couple of people didn't move further the way I would like them to, but we still have lab 3 coming up our way. Out of you guys, how many have already collected the data? Karen, did you collect the data for lab 3?
Yes, I did it this morning.
Oh, fantastic. Ari, what about you? Okay. Brandon?
I
Ah,
haven't done it yet.
you haven't done it yet. Okay. Ari, the question is, have you collected the data for experiment 3? I have not. Okay, let's do that. Leroy, what about you?
Not yet.
Okay. Justin, have you collected the data for experiment 3 yet? Not yet. Okay. Parker? Haven't yet. Okay, you guys need to do that because you only have a week left, right? Okay, good. So to repeat that, this Thursday, we will have a slightly different routine. Yes, it is due on the 17th. You're right. That is a week from today. On the 12th, on Thursday, we will start with watching the documentary. Hopefully you will have had time to read the readings that I posted for you for Jeannie. Like I told you before, this is a two-part article, well, not really an article, but excerpts from the book that were published in 1991 or 1992 in the New Yorker. So it's not a difficult reading, it's just a little long, but again, not terribly long because there were so many ads in the original article, and that's what I have posted for you. I have posted for you the original articles from the New Yorker. There's a book, of course, like I said. The guy's name is Russ Reimer. All right, so if you find the story of Jeannie exciting or interesting or piquing your interest, you may want to look at his book. I think that's the only one. Well, there are some shorter articles on the web. It's about 50 to 55 minutes long. So we will start usual 10:10. Hopefully we'll be done at 11:05, which means you'll have a whole hour to do your quiz. It will have 6 multiple choice questions, 1 point each, and 2 short essays. Yes, I think I will do it on the Blackboard just because it's easier for me to then grade the multiple choice questions at least. Blackboard allows to post essays that are longer than, short answer, which means you'll be able to type in right into the Blackboard, or you can do it in your favorite word processing program and then copy and paste it into Blackboard. Right, which means it will be it will go offline at 12:05 exactly. All right, those short essays about 400 words, which is a bit longer than what you usually write in your blogs, 200 words or more, and each will be worth 2 points. So my suggestion is, as you watch the documentary, is to take notes, at least notes that will help you think about the sort of the storyline. So again, this class, remember, is optional. So I encourage you to text your partner who is not with us and remind them that they should come to class on Thursday. Usually you guys are good, so I'm not concerned that much about attendance. I'm just asking you to please refresh your partner's memory about Thursday. In general, as you know, Thursday is a synchronous class.
Professor,
Yes, Brandon.
do you think like on Thursday when we're about to watch the documentary, we
Mhm.
could see the short essay questions, or are we gonna have to wait till after?
Oh, okay, yes. So
Just like we
yeah,
could
it's
get like a plan or something.
yeah, it's fair. So I won't show you the multiple choice questions. Is that okay? I'll show you the
That's
essay questions.
Okay.
All right, good. I need to make a note to myself. That's what I, oops. That's what I need to do. Okay, give me a second. Okay. Essay questions. I promise not to ask you anything that's esoteric. It's going to be based on the genius story. But you, Brandon, you're right. You need to be able to sort of form the skeleton of your answer as you watch. Good. Thank you for suggesting this. Right. So that's this week. In terms of your potential activities, I've posted 4, and I also posted a short article, which is worth 2 points if you want to do that. Like I said before, at this point, I'll give you as many credits as you will accumulate. So if you want to go more and do more than 4, go for it. Do more than 4. I'll do my best. You can also, this is one of these wonderful topics. There is so much stuff. That's why I sort of stopped at 4, thinking you guys can come up with your own topics easily because it's such a vast field of language acquisition. You can, look at babies, you can look at slightly older children. If you have a niece, nephew, little sister, little brother, before the age, well, 3 to 4 is okay. That will be already pretty good, but before 3 is perfect. Record your child using your phone, ask them a bunch of questions, play a language game with them, and describe that in your blog. So there are things you can do. There's so many of them. That's why I did not go overboard by providing you with potential um, activities. So be creative. Next week, we're gonna be back to doing quizzes. In fact, quiz 10 for chapter 10 is open already, as always. It opens up at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. We'll go until Monday, November 16th. It's on chapter 10, which is concepts and knowledge. That's relatively good stuff. There are a few things that you would need to pay attention to. And after that, you only have 2 more, 11 and 12. So if you're happy with your quiz grades, you can stop taking them, because remember, 2 lowest will be dropped. Just to remind you, that most of you haven't done that yet, your data collection for experiment 3 is due a week from today, November 17th. And now is the most important thing, and this is the preparation for next Thursday. Of course, I will remind you a week from today on Tuesday, the 17th, that there is another chance for you to get 1 participation point by attending the CSI Psychology Colloquium applying to the grad school. That's the one that was supposed to be on, was it 2 weeks ago, but it was postponed because there was a conflicting event at that day. It's going to be on Zoom. The announcement is posted in the announcements on Blackboard during club hours, obviously. Those of you who are considering going to grad school, I would encourage you to attend that. Again, it's going to be presentation by my colleagues, but also students who are doing that or have done that, I think. So that's just after the class. The class will be over at 12:05, and this is at 2:30. So you would you would take that for this coming week. Something is happening behind my door. And there are two more things that we will do on the 19th, because this is our last Thursday class before your lab 3 is due, right? So that's the only chance for us to improve or move forward with your knowledge of lab report writing. So I'm asking you to do two things. First, I'm asking you to read the research article for lab 3, and I'm going to show it to you in a second and give you some points. Again, I will repeat all of this on Thursday, but I encourage you to talk to your lab partner to make sure that they understand that. So one of the problems that I've noticed, again, in lab 2, less so than in lab 1, that people kept talking about study 1. And I specifically ask you not to, because we don't care about study 1, we care about study 2. The same is here. It's a complex experiment with multiple conditions, and we don't need them all, we just need really 2. So that's why I want to talk to you about that. So I need you to read this article by Meyer and Schweinewald. It's a German name, 1971. This is the people who introduced this paradigm called the lexical decision task. And that's what you will be doing in your Finding 5 experiment. I also would like you to go, I know you don't like doing that. You would prefer to look into the future, but if we don't figure out what you need to fix in your lab 2, you will repeat the same errors in lab 3. So I'm asking you to open up your lab 2 with the rubric and go through the text of lab 2 and finding the places where you lost half a point or did not even get any points and fix them. Because then we will open up lab 2 and start fixing lab 3, which many of you already have a draft of because we worked on that before in your Google Docs. Okay, does anybody have any questions about what I'm asking you to do for next Thursday? Not this one, not the 12th, but the 19th. I'm gonna stop sharing and go to the Blackboard while you're thinking.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So on the 19th, I'm asking you to do two things. One of them is to read the research article for lab 3. It's called lexical decision. So I'm going to show it to you in a second. And then I'm also asking you to read through your lab 2 text using the rubric that I sent you, right? Did everybody receive? If you haven't received the rubric from me and you're great, then say something. But I think you guys are all okay. All right. So read through the text with the rubric in hand and fix the problems, because if you don't fix them in lab 2, you will repeat them in lab 3. All right. Okay, so let's go to Finding 5. All right, so let me share the screen with you again. I have received, okay, good, Justin. Leroy, you have received it too, I hope, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. And Karen, you have received it too, right?
Yes.
And I know Brandon did because Brandon responded to me. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, goody. So, okay, good. Can you see experiment 3, lexical decision?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So if we go to that, this is on Blackboard, of course, you go to that. And here is the article, Meyer and Schronewald. I mean, these are American psychologists, but with German names. Meyer is universal. So when you open this article, that's just what I'm doing right now. And you'll have to tell me if you see it because it's going to be. Okay, can you see it? It's a little small, so maybe I should do it in.
Yes.
Okay. make it. It's a little small, but it doesn't matter. So here is the article, right? This is the first page. And then, so you can see page 227 is the introduction. So there is an abstract, right? Right here. Annotate. So here is the abstract. You should read it carefully because most of you are struggling with abstracts. We didn't have time to really go over it. So here is a good way to learn. And remember, this is 1971. In 2020, your word count is limited to 120. So a few people lost a point here. So you're going to read the introduction, which is just basically this page. All right. Go to the second page. And this is the experiment 1. This is what I want you to pay attention to. It's a little too small. Let me close this and show it to you in Adobe because it's just way too small. So give me a second. I need to open it. All right. Okay. There it is. Now I can make it bigger and show it to you. Okay, perfect. All right, so now I'll show you the same article, but in Adobe so that you can see it better. Okay, so here's experiment 1. So this is what you need to pay attention to. We will only focus on 2 conditions in the independent variable that was manipulated. These 2 conditions are associated words and unassociated words. Okay, everything else, so let me get rid of this. See this? 48 pairs of non-words, 96 pairs involving a word and non-word and all of that. So there are 5 conditions. The reason why there are 5, because if you look at this table, there would have been 5 lines here. What I did, I took the 3 lines out because we're not interested in these conditions. So whenever, let's do annotation again. Whenever you see non-word in the text, non-word, okay, you ignore that. Non-word does not apply to us. Okay, is everybody with me? So effectively, this is a 5 condition experiment. We're not looking at these 3 that have non-words in them. Stop me if you're not following what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so let's do the annotate again. So non-words involving a word and non-word, all of that. All of that is good. As you can see, I'm trying to, this is about non-words. We are not paying attention to that. Okay, guys? All right, so there will be this, here is the description of design and materials, right? So 16 pairs of non-words, forget about it. 32 pairs of word and non-word. Forget about it. And here is the stuff that we need. Now I can't. Guess I can use select. Okay. You understand what I'm trying to say, right? That's why this table here on page 229 has only 2 rows, not 5. But I couldn't delete all of that from the text. It would have taken me a long time. Okay. So now when you go to results and discussion, right, you're going to be also looking only at, so whenever it says non-word again, right, all right, all of that, ignore it as if you have a filter that says non-word, don't read it. Here is another non-word result. We don't care. So all we care about is these two. Both strings are words. In one condition, they are associated. In the other condition, they are unassociated. Okay. Then let's, just to make sure, let's get rid of all of this. Clear. Stop. And as you can see, I try to redact stuff. Here's an empty page, which I couldn't get rid of for whatever reason, and it wouldn't disappear. So page 231 is general discussion. You're going to read it again, not paying attention to non-words. If you see non-word, ignore it. There's a little bit of math here, but don't worry about it. And don't read experiment 2 at all. No experiment 2. Okay, so 232, oops, 233, and that's the references. Okay, so you're doing the introduction, you're reading the introduction. Experiment 1, minus non-words, method results, and then you're doing general discussion. You're not doing experiment 2, and you're ignoring all the results that have non-words in them. Is that clear, guys? Stop me and let me repeat something if it's still. Okay, so what I will do now, I will ask you to go to participants management and say, click on yes if you understood, and click on no if you need me to repeat something. Okay, good, good. Okay, well, there are 7 people, so I would like, so just focus on experiment 1 and only words. Yes, Karen, absolutely. 5. Good. Okay, good. I will again go through this on Thursday for the benefit of those who are not with us today. So that's what I need you to do for next Thursday. I need you to read this so we can use this article to continue working on Lab 3. Again, the reason why we're doing it on the 19th, because the 26th obviously is Thanksgiving. We don't have a class, and then it's going to be December 3rd, just when your lab report is due. So you will have 2 weeks to work on it already without us taking advantage of the fact that we can do something in class. Good. Let's go back to language acquisition. All right. Let's see, here we go. Let's open it up. All right, so that's that. So for now, let's open, you guys open the, so we don't need that for now. Let's open the language acquisition quiz that I sent you. There it is. Let me share it with you. And what I would like you to do is to quickly go through these questions in the language acquisition quiz. It's not really a quiz. I just call it a quiz. And what I would like you to do is to circle whether you think that this statement is true or false. So we have 19 true or false statements. And the last one is I'm asking you to write a number, arrange these options according to the order of development. So which of the 7 stages is the first one? Obviously, adult is the last one. So this is going to be stage number 7. What are the other stages? How are they arranged in terms of language development? So I'm going to give you, I don't know, 5 minutes, maybe less than that. So go ahead and do the quiz. It's posted also in the chat in case you didn't receive it in your email. Does everybody have? So say something if you don't have it. But if you do, then just work. In your book, it's fine, Justin. Karen, yes and no, because the questions will be based on Genie, not on language acquisition in general. It's all about Genie. Of course, Genie is a most important case on language acquisition that we know of. I mean, there are others, but Genie is so incredibly interesting. Do you guys know how old she is now? Genie, the feral, the abandoned child that we will study on Thursday. Almost, yes. Actually 59. Yeah, so she's 60, 61. If she's still alive, which we don't know, but I assume they would have made an announcement. Okay, let's do the following. When you're done with the exercise, type in the chat that you're done so that I don't have to wait, that we don't have to wait extra time. children acquire language by imitating adults. If you said true, click yes. If you said false, click no. Uh-huh. Interesting. So out of people who voted, 5 people said yes, and 1 person said no. Okay, the correct answer is no, because to imitate adults, children have to hear every single sentence that they will ever produce, right? So if the child wants to say something, in order for the child to say that, right, it should be modeled by an adult. But that, of course, is completely impossible. It's not possible to always hear something that then you will later say. I also used an example, perhaps you guys remember that. No parent would ever say to the child, I hate you, mommy, right? Or I hate you. So for the child to imitate this, she should have heard that from her parents. And of course, no parent would ever say that. We also will see a little later when we talk about what we call overgeneralization in children, that they often take a standard rule and apply it to the exceptions. So, as you know, in English, we have these verbs where the past tense form or the participle form is different from the present tense. So, an example is hold. So, you hold, the past tense is held, and the participle form is held as well. But you will hear occasionally from young children around the age of 2, maybe slightly over, things like I holded the rabbit. Sometimes even worse than that, I helded the rabbit. Again, they never hear anything like that from adults, unless, of course, they are second language learners, but we don't discuss that case. So definitely, there is nothing that would allow us to predict fantastic results in language acquisition if it was just imitation. All right, well, let's clear that. Let's look at number 2. Children are born with the ability to acquire language. So true, yes. False, red. Excellent. Good. Good. Yep. Perfect. That is one of the most important theories that we will be looking at, you know, and today, and also in Jeannie's assignment. It's what's known as the nativist theory of language acquisition. So the nativist theory of language acquisition, which was proposed originally by Noam Chomsky, says that children are born with innate, like reflex-like ability to acquire language. So the language is wired in the child's brain, and the child cannot not acquire language. It's like not being able to walk. I mean, unless a child has a physical impairment, every child will walk. Some will walk a little later than others, but in general, it's an innate ability. So Chomsky's idea, the nativist idea, right? It's your native endowment. You're born with the ability to acquire language. Because here's one little example. If you were to think that you can acquire language from experience, well, most of you guys have tried to take a second language in high school or in college. Do you speak that language the way 3-year-old native children do? I assume you don't. And you have spent an enormous amount of time, well, especially those who dedicated themselves to learning a foreign language, know that it takes years. And the child does it in 3. I mean, how do they do that? They cannot practice that much to be native speakers in just short 3 years. So it has to be something that they are already predisposed to. Goody. All right, let's look at number 3. Children are born with the language of their parents. So click yes if you think it's true. Click no if you think it's false. Good, good. Everybody is correct. Because if we were to say that it's not just the language ability that's innate, but a particular language, then anything that has to do with adoption, for example, would not ever work. So imagine that you adopt a Chinese baby right after birth, or maybe a few months old, then by definition, they would have to be growing with Chinese, even though if they're adopted by American parents. Obviously, the environmental language is the trigger of the innate ability to learn it. But the language that will be learned would be the language of the society, the language of the parents. Good job, guys. All right. Let's try number 4. Children need to be taught language. Click yes if you think it's true. Click no if it is false. Okay, so I can imagine. So imagine, guys, that you become a parent, which I hope will happen in your life. Here's your baby. You're gonna grab the baby, put the baby on your lap, and say, "Listen, baby. In English, you have to use do to ask a question. Do you like ice cream? Repeat after me. The To form a question, you need to use do. Can you imagine doing this to a baby? That's what it means to be taught language. It's the way you were taught foreign language when you were in high school or in college. It's very different from natural environment. You can imagine, I don't know if anybody had ever experienced that, going to a different country for a semester, like semester abroad, where you are immersed in that language versus being in a classroom where you are taught the language. Nobody teaches babies languages. Okay? The language grows in a baby because of this innate ability, innate wired brain to pick up language. So the correct answer would be, of course, false for 4. Let's try number 5. Children need constant correction to acquire language. Click yes if you think it's true. Click no if you think it's false. So again, a bunch of you think that, yes, children need to be corrected. But if you ever notice a dialogue between a parent and a child, especially a young child, and these are famous cases, the only thing that parents correct is the factual content of the message. So if the child says, tomorrow we went to the circus, the parent will not correct that. Doesn't make sense because tomorrow is the future. As long as, it's going to be the circus. If the child says, tomorrow we're going to the park instead of the circus, that's where the parent will say, oh, no, wait a minute. It's not the park, it's the circus. So parents only correct the content of the message. They never correct, well, never is an exaggeration, almost never correct the forms. In fact, they say, oh, how cute. My goodness, she said held it or whatever, right? So parents are not language teachers. They don't do any of that. They communicate with the baby. So therefore, children learn to speak properly regardless. In fact, one would say in the face of correction. If there are famous stories where and then they're published in language acquisition books, where there is a dialogue between the father and the child, and then the child is using double negation. So he says, nobody doesn't like me. And the father is trying to say, no, say nobody likes me. And then the father says to the child, repeat after me, nobody likes me. So the child says, nobody likes me. And then 2 sentences later, he says, nobody doesn't like me. So the father corrected the child twice, and it still didn't sink because it's completely separate from being taught. Okay, let's do one more, maybe. Let's do number 6. Children must have a normal IQ to acquire language. If you think it's true, click yes. If you think it's okay, good, good, right, good. We may come back to this, but let's get moving with the material. Good. And we'll come back to question 19 in a few minutes. All right, so these are some of the facts. Usually, language acquisition is done by the age of 3 to 4. What will happen after 4? There will be obviously development of the vocabulary. The child will continue to learn new words, and that will happen from the spoken input until about the age of 9. I think I mentioned it to you before, that the only way to learn new words after the 4th grade is by reading. There will be no new words coming to you from the environment and the spoken input. So pragmatics will develop. The child will learn how to say things that are appropriate in the context, and they will learn sarcasm, they will learn metaphors and jokes and all of that. But the basic features of the language, which is phonology, sounds, morphology, bits of words, syntax, a combination of words into sentences, and meaning, lexical knowledge, all of that is in place by 3 to 4. And again, think about yourselves when you were in high school and learning Italian, French, whatever you were, how incredibly difficult it was compared to the little guys. Anyway, but you need a trigger. That's why we say that even if a child is a bit delayed, which happened in the past, especially with the deaf children whose deafness was not immediately obvious, as long as this trigger, the input, gets to the child before the age of 6. So if the child's hearing problems are recognized before the age of 6 and the parents or teachers start to sign, language acquisition is guaranteed. After that, it becomes much more difficult. All right, so between the ages of 6 and around 12, 13, we have cases of feral children. We won't be talking much about them, but there will be a story in the Genie documentary about Victor of Aveyron, who was found around that age. And the Genie, of course, is the case of puberty, at which point we say language acquisition is impossible. Now, there are some caveats, okay? And the reason why it becomes impossible, because we have this, it's okay, Karen, no problem. Because we have this, what we call critical period during which language acquisition has to take place. It's interesting because the parallel with the visual development, again, here is a good topic for somebody who is interested in doing something different from what's posted in your activities. There is a critical period for vision in human babies as well as other species. So if a child is born with a cataract, for example, if the cataract is not removed before a certain age, I'm not telling you what age that is, the child will be blind in that eye. Neurologically, everything seems to be okay. The optic nerve is there, the visual projection areas are there, the thalamus is doing, and the child will still be blind in that eye because of the input that was blocked for that period of time. Yeah. Good, Justin. See you Thursday. Now, the question that you guys just tried to answer, and that was great because you all answered it correctly, has to do with how much of, having an ability to think. is required for a child to acquire language. So here, what's going to help us is thinking about the fact that our brains are lateralized, at least lateralized for many functions. And for language in particular, it is lateralized to the left. That is, we have two main language areas that traditionally are known as Broca's and Wernicke's, and they're connected with articulus fasciculus, which is a band of white matter that connects the two areas, allowing production and comprehension to sort of speak to each other. Interestingly enough, even for people who are, this is of course for people who are right-handed, but even for people who are left-handed, which would presume that lateralization should be on the other hemisphere, it's still on the left. So that is yet another topic that one could look at, is what happens in the lateralization of people who are right-handed versus left-handed? Is there any chance that the right hemisphere can pick up the functions of the left hemisphere for language if the damage to the left hemisphere happens early enough in life, before the critical period? All right. Something that we won't have time to talk about is the acquired language impairment called aphasia. Aphasia is usually the result of a stroke. I mean, there are other situations as well. I once worked with a bunch of aphasic patients in Moscow, and there was an 18-year-old with aphasia. And the reason why he was with aphasia, because he was actually hit with an axe on his head. And the axe landed in such a way that it damaged Broca's areas in his case. So he was aphasic at the age of 18. So that's a sad story. So wear your helmets around people with axes. Anyway, so the issue is that aphasia is not related to IQ because it's an acquired language disorder, usually, like I said, the result of a stroke. So the nonverbal IQ for aphasics is the way it was before the trauma, before the infarct or before the insult, if we happen to know that. But if we test them after the accident, their IQ is still normal. So adult aphasics, people with acquired language impairments, don't have any IQ problems unless they had it to begin with before that. Now, with the children, one could ask this question. We do have, Leroy, you were not hit with an axe, I hope. Like Dostoevsky's Raskolnikov, right?
Motorcycle accident.
Yes, I remember. Motorcycle accident. Yeah. But your speech is laborious, but it's totally understandable, and you have no real language issues except for a little bit of a
I
pronunciation.
had spent 2 years where I couldn't speak at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, I remember your introduction, which means that it's good that there are certain things. It would be really nice to kind of look at your fMRI films right after and now. How many years have you been in this state?
My accident was about 5.5 years ago.
Good, good. Have you ever had an fMRI?
No, I don't think I did. Maybe when I was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm. So it'd be really, really interesting to see what your brain looks like now, 5.5 years after your accident. Actually, there may be ways of perhaps getting you to participate in one of the experiments. We just have to think about that. Anyway, coming back to the children, we have this very interesting case of children whose IQ is absolutely fine, but whose language is not where it should be compared to their peers. Usually we say at least one standard deviation below, and it's known as specific language impairment, SLI. That is, The child has no processing problems. The child's IQ is okay. Hearing is fine. Vision is fine, but the language is still impaired. And this group of children is very important for studies of language acquisition. So if we go to our favorite way of looking at dissociations, so we can look at the contingency table where we cross intelligence with language. So here is a normal situation when we have a child whose intelligence is normal and language is normal, and we call these kids typically developing children. And most of children, thank God, are like this. Then I'm sure you are familiar with a situation when a child is born with the Down syndrome. In the Down syndrome, the intelligence is diminished. Most of Down children have an IQ of 70 and below, and 70 is a cutoff for mental retardation. That is, most of Down syndrome children are mentally retarded according to this classification, and the language is impaired. That is, if you listen to a Down syndrome child speak, you'll notice it immediately. You'll hear many problems that they have with that. So these are the two sort of cases where intelligence and language go hand in hand. Well, we would expect that. But here are the two special cases where the intelligence and language are dissociated. That is, the specific language impairment I just mentioned, where children's IQ is totally normal and everything else is normal. They're not impaired in cognition in any other way, just the language. And there was and still a lot of research going on to identify if there is a genetic background to this. And FOX2P, if anybody has ever heard of that, there was a family identified in the UK about 20 years ago where if you look at all the extended family members, so many of them were language impaired for no reason. No reason, nobody had an accident or something like that. And the number of members of the family with language impairment was significantly higher than if you take any other family. So they did the genetic profiling of that family and they identified this FOX2P gene that presumably is responsible for that. However, not too many studies followed up on this, so we're not quite sure whether this is just a fluke in the history of this family or there's something more than just that. Finally, the opposite situation is where language is completely normal. Well, completely, with some caveats, but intelligence is diminished. And this is the Williams syndrome children. I don't know if anybody has ever seen those. There's also a spina bifida condition where there is a sac coming out of the spinal cord during the pregnancy, and they become severely impaired in many things. But I don't want to talk about spina bifida. If you're interested, could be yet another activity for you. But I want to show you the Williams syndrome children. Look, the IQ is 50. It's sometimes way below the Down syndrome children. But the language is quite fluent, and they're a very interesting group of, it's a rare genetic condition. It's a chromosome 7 that has that problem. There's genes 26 to 28 that are missing in these kids. Now let me make sure that the sound is on. Share.
We were all talking today about the joy of our kids. And it's true, they are joyful. But there's so much behind the joy that people walking down the street don't ever see.
That Williams syndrome diagnosis is a part of our lives because it's part of who Ryan is, but it doesn't define Ryan as an individual. He's his own person.
She has changed our life totally. I see this big heart running over to take care of everybody. I feel like she takes care of me sometimes.
My favorite type of music is any music that gets me in the mood. I love like Meghan Trainor. I love like Justin Timberlake. What grade are you?
I am not in grades. I am in kindergarten, which is not a grade. I'm gonna be a zookeeper. I'm gonna be a firefighter. I'm gonna be a football player. I have one dog and one turtle. Hi, my name is Ryan. My name is Ryan. My name is Jackson, and I live at home.
Kids who have Williams syndrome, like, they're really nice and they are kind and friendly. That's why I like it.
When somebody talks about Williams syndrome, I think my body sort of washes over with a bunch of sadness, to be honest. There are lots of things to worry about, you know, medical issues, neurological issues, school bullying issues. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Having a child with any special needs is that it's really an ongoing process. There's challenges when they're babies, and those challenges are they going to reach all those milestones? Is he learning at the same pace as the other kids? Is he making friends with the other kids? And are they going to be kind to him? Ryan had heart surgery when he was 10 days old, and then that was when everything hit both of us, and we were just a wreck, not knowing what was going to happen because he was a little 5-pound baby.
Rose has the classic cardiovascular condition, and it started out as mild and now it's moderate, and we're hoping it stays there. If it gets more serious, then we'll have to have conversation about heart surgery.
A couple of months ago, we had to extract the tooth, and I couldn't find a dentist that was comfortable enough putting her under anesthesia. So just the simple thing like removing a tooth, I have to take her into a hospital setting. And there has to be a full team of cardiac people and anesthesiologists.
I was 0 when that happened.
You were almost 2. Ryan was just under 2 when he had open heart surgery, and the surgery was very dangerous. So we only did it when we felt like it was too dangerous not to do it any longer. He went in to the hospital first for a catheter, and during that procedure, Ryan actually did experience the bad reaction to anesthesia that can cause a sudden death outcome, and we were very lucky. It sounded like he was on the brink.
Mia was diagnosed pretty early on, and, you know, pretty late in life, she developed very high blood pressure. We were already seeing a battery of doctors for all of her cardiac issues and kidney issues. It just underscores the fact that it doesn't matter how old the kids are, these very serious cardiovascular issues just pop into your life.
All right. Did you guys notice anything special about the way these kids look like? Yeah, the lips. So if you were to describe a Down syndrome child, no, Leroy, not really. I mean, they don't look like Down syndrome children at all. What's so special about the faces? The lips, right? But what would be a metaphor that you could use to describe them? Let's see if I can. So I'll have to go all the way to the beginning. They look, there's a term that people have been using to describe them, like the elf-looking children. So they have these large eyes and baby faces and sort of slightly floppy ears, very, very distinct, just like the Down syndrome look is very distinct. So what you can see in this a little clip that if you, I'm not going to show you the Down syndrome because I think you can do it yourselves, and you probably have seen somebody who knows somebody with the Down syndrome, that these kids are extremely fluent with language. I mean, there are cases when a 2-year-old, a little older than that, 2.5-year-old Williams syndrome child could name 20 dinosaurs and would use language that's so flowery and advanced, sometimes too flowery. So despite the fact that they are mentally retarded, they are extremely good with language. So that gives us this idea that language will flourish and grow in child, even if the child is, even if child's IQ is not where it is for his or her typically developing children. So it's a very interesting, and it's a relatively rare syndrome, 1 in like 15,000 births, but it's there. As you can see, there's a whole foundation that's dedicated to research of the Williams syndrome, and interesting articles about experimental work with them. Okay, so before we move on, let's take a 6-minute break until 11:25. Language is innate. There's still quite a few people in the field in cognitive psychology who struggle with this idea. Now, remember we started talking about the differences between language and communication systems in animals last week. And more or less, we do have a firm conclusion that language is unique to humans. That is, what animals do is obviously communication, but it's not qualified as language because language has the unique properties that we discussed last week. We talked about 6 of them, but there's 13. So innateness has to do with the fact that it's something that is pre-wired in the human brain. And because it is pre-wired in the human brain, then the development of that faculty, language faculty, is identical across the universe, across other languages, anywhere in the world. And it does not require overt training or teaching. This is what we discussed in the beginning of the exercise. Because it is innate, it's there. You don't, all you need is the trigger in the form of input from the environment. So again, just to remind you, what are these characteristics that are common across other languages, all the languages maybe, and different cultures. So let's start with the phonemes, right? Remember, these are the sounds. So what we know about children, that they are innately pre-wired to prefer human language to any other sound in the environment. So we even know that it happens in the womb. So the child, the fetus, is still not born, but the fetus is exposed to the mother's voice because she talks. Of course, it's not a very crisp sound because it goes through all the fluid that the child, that the fetus is still bathing inside, but there is enough of the sound quality for the child to sort of learn that. There is a very nifty experiment when the mother, during the last trimester, which is 90 days, approximately 3 months, the mother participants, they were expecting. So they agreed to use the Cat in the Hat, which is a well-known child's rhyme story, like by Dr. Seuss. The mothers agreed to read that story twice a day for 6 weeks. So the child is not born yet, right? So there she is sitting in her chair, reading the Cat in the Hat, doing it twice a day. So when the child was born, what the researchers did, they used a particular method called a conditioned head turning paradigm, or if a child is younger, which was actually the case of these guys because they were newborns, they used what they call the sucking technique. Now, if you think about babies, what do they do well, even when they're born? I mean, they can't talk, right? They can't follow instructions. They're developing in every aspect. But the one thing that they know how to do is to suck. So babies suck, not obviously literally, I mean, not metaphorically, but literally, they can suck. So they sleep and they suck, they sleep and they suck. So one could imagine that if you create a very cool device, you take a pacifier, right, as a non-nutritional sucking, but something that helps babies to calm down, and attach it to an apparatus that measures the intensity, that is how often the child is sucking, and the duration, how long the sucking event takes place, to a computer, you can actually record child sucking parameters, so to speak. So this is like classical conditioning. In a way, you understand that because we talked about classical conditioning before. So the baby is given this, the newborn is given this pacifier, and then you present the baby with something that babies like. And babies like human faces, they like mother's voice. So when they see something or hear something that they like, they start sucking more intensely, and they do it for a longer time. Then, so let's say it's the mother's face, right? Then they take the mother's face away and replace it with a face of a different woman. Maybe it's actual people, or maybe it's just the photos. The baby doesn't seem to be so much interested in that face, so her sucking goes down or even stops. So this is called habituation in sucking. So you can imagine that you can use all kinds of stimuli to see what baby is paying attention to. So when the baby is interested, the baby likes something, the sucking intensifies and it goes for a longer period of time. When the baby loses interest, sucking goes down or stops completely. So this paradigm can be used to study newborns. So in that experiment that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, the mother would read the same story, The Cat in the Hat, to the newborn baby, and the baby would suck like crazy because they liked it. They remembered the story when they were still in the womb. When a different mother's story was given to the babies, they would stop sucking. They would not be interested in that. So not only they recognize the fact that it's the mother, but they recognize the story, meaning that being in the womb was already enough for them to sort of kickstart the language development. Perhaps the problem is, I mean, what do they do in terms of listening to these sounds? How do they, if you think about spoken language, obviously it's not coming up with the words are not coming up with sort of spaces the way they are in the written language. So how do they even know how to segment the sounds? How do they know if they're listening to this uninterrupted speech, where do the words end and the new words begin? I mean, if you guys have ever, again, did your second language stint in the past, it's one of the biggest issues. I mean, you're just listening to this, you stun, you have no idea where, in a different language, where these words sort of end and new words begin. So let's have a little exploration of that. I'm going to stop sharing the slides and show you something else. Let's see if it's okay. Okay, so let's look at something called a speech analyzer. It has a name, Audacity. Can you guys see the gray screen?
Blank gray, yeah.
Good. All right. So let's say I'm gonna say a sentence. We don't have any Russian speakers. Okay, that's good. So I'm gonna record a short sentence, and hopefully you'll see the waveform. But let's make it stereo. Okay, good. Однажды галок попугая увидел в клетке попугая и слышит, молвит попугай. All right, so that's my native language. It's a little small, but I can make it large enough, actually. I can make it longer, though. Yeah. View, zoom in. Okay. That doesn't sound like there are breaks between the words, right? So if I were to ask you to estimate how many words were there in this little half a poem that I read for you, I don't think you will be able to do so. You may say, okay, oops, resume sharing, sorry. Maybe something here is like a break, right? Maybe something here is a break, and there is more. Maybe this is a break between the words, but I'm showing you the waveform, right? That's not very fair to little babies. They don't get that. So if I were to stop this, if I were to play, if I can select something. Однажды галок попу. Yeah? It's very, very difficult. So how do babies listen to this in the native language? Of course, we're talking about the native languages, but it could be a bilingual baby. How do they know where the word begins? They hear the vowels and the way they sound. Well, okay, let's do something in English, but let's get rid of the annotation. Okay, so where are the silences between the words? So let's move it here, for example. Nothing. Where are the... Okay. So you can hear that that little thingy here is the sound in the, okay? And this thing is between. Yeah, you're hearing the vowels, Karen, but that's not enough for you to figure out, does this vowel belong to this word or that word? So what babies do, they rely on two things. They rely on prosody, that is the intonation, the way we create our pitch. And they also rely on what we call phonotactics of the language. That is, they know, well, not immediately. They learn which combination of sounds are available, possible in the language, and which ones are not. So what do I mean by the pitch? Let's see if I can do low pass filter. Okay. Where are the silences between the words? Okay, that's still good. Let's do something crazy. No, it's not going to do it. Change pitch. That's what we want. Okay, I want it to go down.
Where are the silences between the words?
Okay, I sound like a real...
Where are the silences between the words?
I sound like a real nice man. Okay. But you hear the pitch? Yeah, I think it's some... We can change pitch and let it go up. Like a... Where are the silences between the words? Nice, right? I sound like a chipmunk almost. Right, so even in the womb, the babies are very attentive to this, so they can hear the pitch and the contours of the native language, right? So in English, where are the, right? In other languages, it will sound very differently. And they also know that if you're looking at a combination of different sounds, only some of them are possible in English, and they're only possible in the beginning of the word or at the end of the word. All these things become incredibly important for babies to start to parse the spoken. This is really cool. Yeah. So if you guys, I mean, I know, Karen, it's a bit too late for you because you are graduating, but those of you who may be still interested in looking at potential courses that you can take, we have a bunch of courses in the English department. I think it's the English department, and they're taught by Jason Bishop. And Jason Bishop is a phonetician, phonologist. He actually has a phonology lab at CSI. No, of course, now it's all done online, but you can do a lot of things with the programs that I just showed you. This one is called Audacity. It's like a speech analyzer. So if you're interested, there are a bunch of courses that have to do with linguistics. In fact, we do have a linguistics minor at CSI. Interesting. And you could study what happens with parsing of actual language. Okay. So remember morphemes? We talked about little bits of the words that have meaning as opposed to phonemes. Phonemes don't. So how do children learn words? How do they learn these parts of words? How do they know that something is a noun, something is a verb? There's a very famous thought experiment, which means it's not an actual experiment. It's what you tell people to think about. So imagine you guys walking on the street of an unknown country or the country where you don't speak the language. You're walking with somebody who does, and you see this huge billboard, and this billboard represents a blue rabbit. Can you guys imagine a blue rabbit? All right, so now this local person points to that billboard and says, Gava guy. I'm going to type it. Guy. All right. What does she mean by Gava guy? Can somebody guess? A rabbit. Okay. Maybe it is the blue rabbit. Maybe it is, hey, look, it has ears. Maybe it is, oh, look how big it is. When somebody says something like Gava guy, and that's Wittgenstein's problem, we don't really know what the person who pronounces this Gava guy refers to. Yes, Parker is right. We are more likely, and because it's also an innate knowledge, we are pre-wired to understand new concepts when they are presented to us at the basic level. Now, we'll be talking a lot about that when we go to concepts and knowledge next week, but you can think of a hierarchy of knowledge. We have something which we call a basic category. Okay, and then we have subordinate category that's below it, and we have superordinate category that's above it. So if an easier example would be, let's say, a bird. Okay, well, a bird is a basic category. Now, if somebody says, well, what is the subordinate category? Something that is more specific, but also is a bird. So if you see something that has wings and tail and little red cap on its head, are you going to call it a bird? Or are you going to call it something else? What is the bird that has a little red cap on its head? Cardinal is completely red, Leroy. This is the bird that's black with the red head. not entire head, but just the top of the head. Yeah, you guys don't know your birds, huh? Woodpecker, it's the woodpecker. The woodpecker, the one that goes up and down the tree and looks for insects in the bark. So if you see that, if you're talking to the baby, you're more likely to say, hey, look, it's a bird, right? But you may think, if you're sort of into training your child to recognize birds, you're not going to say a bird. You're going to say, hey, look, it's the woodpecker. All right. Or you could say, well, it's the superordinate category would be an animal. I guess a bird is an animal. That's a little funny. Okay. So the problem with recognizing words and their parts is, how do we even know whether the name refers to the whole object and not its part, or its movement, or whatever else it may be doing? So learning the meaning of the words is also possible because of the innate components. Like, we know that babies know the permanence of an object. What does it mean? Well, there are classical experiments where there is like a little stage in front of the baby, and there is a curtain, and here comes, let's say, a car, and here's the curtain, and the car goes behind the curtain. And what happens, the babies start looking at the other end. They expect the car to reappear because they know that the object that's moving will continue to move and will come out. Now, this is not something that we teach these babies. They just know that. And they know that because of the innate knowledge of some physical principles. So you could imagine something, and again, these are all classical experiments, where the car gets behind the curtain and what reappears here is a ball. Babies show this incredible amount of surprise because they didn't know that the car will be transformed into a ball. So the same with this, the way the language is operating in the acquisition process, by using these bits of innate principles that are wired in the child's brain, helping them to say, oh, Gavagai must be a rabbit, not a blue rabbit, not an animal. It has to be a rabbit. It has to be at the basic category level, because it is something that we are pre-wired for, helping us to learn the words of our language. What also happens with the morphemes, I already alluded to this example, is the children, and this is already not babies, but maybe toddlers, a little bit older than that, they learn the rules. They know that to say, a rabbit and make it into multiple rabbits, you'll have to say rabbits. So they learn the rule of making a noun into a plural noun by adding an S, or Z might be pronounced. Okay, so that's fine. So far, so good. So they say rabbit, rabbits, table, tables. And then they come across deer. So what happens now? What will the baby say? What will the toddler say? Can somebody guess? Non-native speakers do that too. Some of them say deers. They apply the rule to an exception. They overgeneralize the rule. But that tells us that they know the root morpheme, right? Deer. And now they can add a plural to that. And then they have to get through the period of where they have to correct themselves. Remember, parents don't do that. A parent won't say, no, dear, it's not deers, it's deer. Parents just don't do that. And then the babies have to learn all of these articles, prefixes and suffixes, remember things like and or, all of that allow us to combine the words into sentences or phrases. So acquiring the grammar. And Chomsky refers to this as the universal grammar. That is, there are certain features of the language, remember, that are universal across all the languages. So all the languages have nouns and verbs. Okay, there are no languages that don't have those. If you look at the color terms, then you'll see a lot of variability. So one of the so-called universals is if the language has a word for black, it will have a word for white. But then the rest of the primary colors or other colors, it's very language specific. So again, in English, we say blue, or we can say light blue, we can say dark blue, royal, navy, but the color of the sky is still blue. While in Russian, there are two different words for blue. One is for the sky blue, the other one for any other darker blue. Again, language specific, but the understanding of colors is pre-wired, just like the understanding of concepts. Okay? So phonology and morphology, right? The stuff that we talked about last week. And syntax, the way the words are combined into phrases. And that's where it becomes so much fun when the kids move from the one-word stage by putting words together into two-word stage and beyond speaking in fluent sentences. Such a joy. If you guys, when you have your children, make sure your phone is next to you at the moment when your kid starts doing this. This is very exciting. Okay, so the idea is that it's going to be universal across all the cultures and across the languages. Infants will prefer the language in which they're born, but until about the age of 7 months, they are the citizens of the world. They can recognize phonetic contrasts that are in other languages. So there is a psychologist, developmental psychologist at the University of British Columbia, Janet Worker, who has done a lot of this pioneering work on showing that children until about the age of 7 can learn distinctions in various phonemes. So if you think about Japanese, in Japanese, there are no two different sounds for L and R, so R. In fact, Japanese speakers of English often confuse la and ra, or rag and lag. They pronounce them the same. But the babies, until about the age of 7 months, will be able to, so you can use this. In fact, that's not going to be a sucking paradigm anymore. It's going to be a head turning paradigm. And I'll show you in a second how it works. You can train young babies to recognize different sounds, and they will do that successfully until about 7 months. And then between 8 to 10, they lose the ability to recognize sounds that are from languages other than their own, and they become solid monolingual speakers of their own language. So let's see, where is this? Okay, so they recognize differences until about 6 to 7 months. They're not saying anything, right? This is all about comprehension or perception, if you wish. It's not about production. And then they only attuned to the native language. And that's why, remember, there's a foreign accent that we all are so familiar with adults who come to a different country and start learning the language of that country. They find it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to ever shed the accent. In fact, you probably can recognize some of the accents in various ethnic populations in New York. We know how Indian speakers sound. We know how, Russian speakers sound, how Nigerian speakers sound in English. We know what are the special features because they missed the critical period hypothesis for acquisition of correct pronunciation, which happens very early on. So if you ever want to teach your child another language, do it early. So what happens in terms of production now, that about 3 to 4 months of age, they start cooing. cooing is, just these sounds that are really not sounds of language, but vocalizations, as if the child is practicing with his or her vocal tract. Then come the combinations of consonant and the vowel. So you get to hear the child saying da 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 da, ma 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 ma, boo 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 boo. It's going to be a consonant and a vowel, a consonant and a vowel, and that's about 4 to 6. And which country is she from, Leroy? Israel. Okay, yeah, Israelis do have a very distinct accent, but 44 years, of course, is a very, very long time. All right. Interestingly, I may not have time to do that, but you again could do that as your activity. We have deaf babies, deaf from birth, who also, they don't coo because they can't really produce sounds, but they babble, but they babble with their hands. So instead of saying da 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 da, they'll do something like this, ba 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 ba, and they'll do something like this. It's very interesting work by Laura Petito, and she actually published in Nature. So here is a. This is not the babbling of Laura Petito, which I think is further, but we don't get to go there. This is yet another thing that I mentioned, that babies have preference for certain sounds. First of all, sounds of the native language, sound of the voice of their mother, and they also have preference what we call motherese. It's infant directed speech. And babies do something to us. When we see a baby, we all sort of melt and we start, talking to them in exaggerated voice, short sentences, high and low pitch. And babies love that.
Hi, Archer. Hi, you gonna smile? Oh, look, you're so cute. Yeah? You took a nap, huh? Was it a good nap? Huh? Yeah. That's a good boy. Who did you sleep with? I see Elmo here. Is that your nap time, buddy? You're a good boy, huh? Are you a good boy? Yes, you are. Okay. Your Auntie Sheila's gonna come visit you. Yeah, do you like Auntie Sheila? Do you? Yeah? You don't know? You haven't met Auntie Sheila yet, huh?
Okay, so that's a really cute example of motherese, that the mother's talking to the baby. He's about 3 to 3.5 months old, using, huh, do you like that? Was it a good nap? You were a good boy. All of this is the motherese, and that is yet another way of sort of helping baby to latch on onto the native language and language of the parents, the language of the society. There's lots and lots of interesting research in motherese, and so far we know about only one culture in somewhere in Africa that does not have motherese. That is, parents, mothers in particular, don't practice this kind of exaggerated speech. when talking to the infants. But most cultures that we are familiar with are classical cultures, European ones, and many African ones as well. Yes, in fact, that's how I talk to my daughter's dog. He's so cute, I just can't help it. But for children, there is an additional bonus, right? They are more likely, there he is, that's the dog barking in the background. They have the innate capacity to soak up that language, which helps them to master it. So interestingly, one would think, well, if we want to kind of boost our baby's language development, should we not only speak Maltese to them, but should we like introduce separate words, and we'll say dog or rabbit or woodpecker or whatever. It turns out that actually that doesn't do much. When we look at the words that are introduced to babies in isolation, and then we can use the head turning paradigm to see if they learned the word, it doesn't seem to matter that much. They can learn these words from full utterances. Let's see, we should probably, okay, we'll get to that in a second. And these are the stages of some of the language development, including maybe a bit of a non-native sounds as well. So cooing, this is what this baby was doing. That was cooing. Babbling, I told you, has to do with a combination of consonant vowels of different types. Obviously, the most universal one is like ba and da, that most languages have these sounds, b, d. So this babbling is sort of non-discriminatory. These sounds are, it's hard to say whether they are native or not, but by the age of 10 months, this babbling becomes very native. So you can get sounds like which is a very common sound in Russian, but very difficult for non-native speakers, adult speakers, to pronounce correctly. And then comes the first year mark. At this point, most babies become fluent one word stage producers. That is, they start producing single words. And we have an instrument called a CDI, communicative inventory, where we can give a questionnaire to parents and ask them to mark the words that the child, according to them, understands and produces. So we can actually calculate some of the language. That's where these stages come from. And by the age of 2, we now in a 2-word stage. So buy milk, daddy home, stuff like that. And after that, it's just blows out of proportion. The language just breaks through and the child becomes a very, very fluent speaker of the native language. How do we know that? And that's going to be our last piece. Well, in the old days, we talked about, we only had diaries. So somebody was observing a child and writing down whatever the child was doing. Now, of course, we are in a much better situation. In the 1950s, saw the introduction of tape recorders. You guys probably haven't even seen one, but there is a tape and there are buttons, and you can put the tape recorder next to the child and record the child's spontaneous speech. Beautiful breakthrough compared to, diaries. And of course, now, from the 1980s, we actually have a wonderful new, it's not new anymore, right? It's 40 years old, database of child language called Childus. And Childus has now an enormous amount. I think it's close to 1 billion words in different languages, in different configurations, monolingual, bilingual children, children with specific language impairment, children with Down syndrome, English, Turkish, you name it. It's an enormous resource that has been supported by National Science Foundation. And we do have experimental tasks, which we don't have time to go to, but you can also do some of that for your activities. And what I was going to say last is that we do have a course in at our department called Language Development. It's 342. That's a great course. Usually my colleague Patty Brooks teaches it. I taught it a couple of times too, but unfortunately I don't get to teach it that often because I'm the only one who can teach cognitive psychology. Okay, at this point, guys, class is over. I'll see you all on Thursday. Be there on time and please talk to your partners to make sure that everybody's there at 10:10. Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.